Hello there, it's Cassie. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I am over on the Rabbit Hole Designs blog with this fun little card that I'm going to make using this awesome stamp set called Merry Mousemas. This is new to the Rabbit Hole Designs, and so let's go ahead and get started with the card that we're making. I've got some white pigment ink along with this fun die, or a stencil. It's not a die, it's a stencil, and the stencil is called Light Me Up, and I am going to just pounce some of that white pigment ink using a mini ink blending tool into where those snowflakes are. So I really like this stencil simply because there's a lot of bang for your buck. Not only do you have these really cool different snowflakes, you also have a couple different designs for lights, which is really neat. And so I'll put 3 on there, and I'm even going to go over that one just a little bit more just to make sure that it's good and deep. And I'm not so concerned about having some of that white pigment all over the paper because I'm going to use some perfect pearls. I am going to just take my paintbrush, put those right onto my glass mat. And if I'd been thinking, I would have put water on there first, because as you'll watch, I spray and psh, perfect pearls go everywhere. So I'm not happy with how much I have, so I grab a little bit more, spray a little bit more water, this time just kind of using my hand to make sure that it stays where it is. And my plan is to just flick this all over that background to make it look a little bit more like it's a snowfall scene. And you'll see once the card starts coming together. So I'm just putting that all over. So you got the big giant snowflakes, then you have these tiny little spots that are supposed to look like snowflakes in the background as well. Now there's plenty of that perfect pearl left, and I am going to just take my cardstock and rub the edges into it. And you really can't tell a whole lot, but it does frame out my piece just pretty nicely. And I only do it on 3 sides because that's all that's necessary. And then I'm going to heat set that so that's dry, or till that's dry. And then I'm just going to take a scrap of white cardstock that I have, and I'm going to cut my own little snowbank right into it. And then I'm going to get ready to adhere this together. So my panel was like 4 inches, 4 by 4, and that I'm trying to make sure that this covers like about 5 1/4 inches. So I'm going to grab my tape runner, which I never use anymore, and I am going to just stick that down so that that panel will be about 5 1/4 inches. And I'm not so concerned about the tape runner because this is going to go down onto a card base just using some liquid glue here eventually. So I'll stick my card base, which is just some white cardstock that I have, into my score buddy, and I will score that at 5 1/2 inches to make that a top folding A2 size card. And then I'll put some liquid glue all over my panel and put that down, and then we have a nice little snowy scene that will be ready to go for our little mouse that we're going to stamp. I'm putting some Express It cardstock into my mini Misti, and I'm going to put my little mouse from my Merry Mousemas set right in there and ink it up with Memento Tuxedo black ink. And then I'll close the door of the Misti, and you'll see that cute little mouse all ready to be colored. But while I have my Misti out, I am going to put my card base right back into the Misti and put my sentiment down at the bottom. I'll close the door of the Misti, ink that up with some VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink, because I want to make sure that's good and crisp, and one time ought to do it. Now we're going to move on to doing some coloring. I'm not so concerned about coloring that little ornament completely blue because I'm going to go back over it with some white gel pen, but I am for the most part, I'm putting up the colors on the screen that I'm using. This is actually R29. It's a Chow marker. It's not my sketch. I started off, when I first started alcohol marker coloring so many eons ago, I started off with Chow markers because that's just what I had, what I could afford. And I have slowly been building up my stash, and haven't replaced too many of my Chows because they work fine. But this is the R29, and I am just going over some of his little trim with some of that R29, and then I'm going to grab the R59 for my deeper shade. He's such a detailed little image that you wouldn't necessarily have to do a 3 color blend if you didn't want to, and so I stuck with just 2 colors. I'm going to use the YG67 to start for my greens, and his little outfit almost reminds me of like pajamas. He just looks so darling, and I like how it doesn't fit his little top, so he has his little belly showing. But we're starting with the YG67, and because this is a night scene and I use some navy cardstock for my background, I wanted him to be a little bit more, I guess, more in the regal colors. And so that's why I chose the greens that I did. And my darker shade is G29. And this is actually one of their original markers. So their original markers don't have a brush nib. They have a bullet nib, and they also have a chisel nib. I only have a couple of those. And then I'll go back over that and blend that out with my YG67. I'm using a W1 for the white areas of his hat. And then to color him, I'm going to go with some more warmer tones. I'm starting with E42. And then I'm going to just color all of, just a base, a nice base color. So that way I can come in with my darker tones. The next one will be E43. Just to add a little bit darker shading to parts of the little mouse. I just love his little belly. And then we have E44, being a little bit sparing with that because it's much darker. And then I'll blend that out with the E43 again. And then I'm going to come in with some RV11. And I'm going to use that to color his little hands and his tail and his little feet. And then we'll kind of blend the ear out a little bit with my colorless blender. And then we'll color his belt with Y28. And then we'll fussy cut him out, and I'm going to cover the back of him with some foam tape. This is actually a fairly simple card. It doesn't, because the scene was much more involved and then his coloring was pretty involved, you don't have to do a whole lot with it. And so I'm just peeling off the backing paper. And on his little feet, it was hard to get the size of foam tape that I needed, so I'm just trimming that down and peeling off the rest of that release paper, and then I'll stick that down on the front of the card. And because I don't want him just to look like he's floating, I did grab my W1 marker once again, and I'm going to put down some shadowing. For the inside, I'm going to stamp up the Merry Christmas Merry Christmas with some VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink, and then I am going to grab the mouse once again. I'm going to ink him up with some Bundled Sage Distress Oxide ink. I thought he would just be nice and cute in a subtle green. And then when I'm done with that stamping, that's going to finish off this card. So like I said, I'm over on the Rabbit Hole Designs blog, so I will have a link down below to that blog post. So go on over and check out what we've been doing. And as I said before, I will have a link to all the products that I use down below in the description box. If you liked this video, please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already done so. And as always, thank you so much for stopping by.